How's it going, everyone? College Lefty, and in this video I have for you the top 10 or more best players at each position in MLB The Show 25, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And I want to start by saying that I would probably use all of these cards that I have listed in the video. I would also use some other guys. I just didn't want to include like every single card in the entire game, but we're starting off with pitchers, and we are starting off with a knuckleballer. I still think that card might be a little bit effective, at least early on in the game cycle. We got Clayton Kershaw, who does have a very quick motion out of the stretch. And a lot of these cards are really good depending on the user, right? That's the one thing about starting pitching. It really depends on whether or not your opponent can hit these guys. That Kumar Rocker has a really deceptive motion. Some of these guys have better hits in K/9. Some of them have higher pitching clutch. I really think that the slider is one of the best pitches in the entire game, along with the sinker. So you're going to notice that a lot of these cards have a slider. You also have to look at their individual pitch break on that pitch. I think having 99 or 95, 90 plus break and control on individual pitches makes a huge difference. I think Tom Glavine could be a little bit higher. This Tariq Skubal could be even a little bit higher. Just really depends on if you're looking for a lefty, if you're looking for a righty. I think all of these cards have great pitch mixes. They all have great attributes, but it's really just comes down to personal preference. I have this immortal looking Steve Carlton at number 16, kind of in the middle of the pack. I think he's pretty good, but his hits per nine is a little bit low. Some of these guys have lower hits per nine, but they also have better pitching clutch. So if there's guys in scoring position, they're really good. This Randy Johnson could be a top 5 pitcher in the game if someone is really good at pinpoint pitching and they can utilize that card effectively. I think that Bubba Chandler card is a top 5 pitcher in the game as well, with his elite pitch break and pitch control. It just depends on the user, and I ranked him lower because he can't pitch as deep into the game. Blake Snell has really good inside edge right now. That card looks super juiced. We have Al Leiter. A lot of top players are using this guy. A lot of top players are going to be completing those collections and using a variety of pitchers, right? You might have 2 starting pitchers that you would use in a ranked game, and I definitely ranked that Clay Buchholz way too low on my Team Affinity list. I think he's a really good pitcher, and he gets those boosts, right? That's kind of where I was going with that. You might have 2 starting pitchers that you want to use, and then the rest you're kind of building up for those Team Affinity boosts. But I think Roki Sasaki having outlier is really good. Chris Sale at number 2 being very deceptive. If you face somebody who just simply cannot hit Chris Sale, then you're going to probably win that game. We have Roger Clemens at number 1, of course. I think he's the best pitcher in the game, but there will be others. There will be better pitchers than him, I think. Now we're getting into some relievers. Some of these relievers on the lower tier end are still very, very good. They are top guys. You'll see a lot of the top guys utilize some of these cards, like that Columbi card. We got Josh Hader. We got Helsley. Some of these guys are just kind of swapping back and forth, lefty, righty. And then they also don't really have like the best pitch mix. That Column is kind of an exception. He does have 5 pitches and like 99 break on a couple breaking balls. But some of these guys have outlier, but then just 3 pitches. And then as we get into some of the top guys, at least kind of how I've listed them, to me, they're, I guess, well-rounded, all-around relief pitchers or closing pitchers that you could use, not necessarily to bring in versus, 2 or 3 batters, but you're trying to extend them. I faced that Kirby Yates card. That Kirby Yates with the 125 hits per 9 is really, really tough. Matt Strom, always really good, easy to use as well. A lot of these cards are, depending on the user with the pinpoint pitching meter, but some of these guys I feel like are super easy to use in terms of how fast you have to move around that right stick. A couple of these cards at the top of the list have a very quick motion, and I have been struggling a little bit with my pitching, especially with this Justin Martinez card. This is a guy I have in the top 6 pitchers, could even be higher, but I just simply cannot pitch with him personally. I've still used him, though. He's one of my top go-to guys just because he is that good, even if I don't have the best pitching input. Devin Williams, you could argue, is a number 1 closing pitcher, but I just ranked Rob Dibble and Goose Gossage ahead of him. And now let's go ahead and get into some of these position players. We're going to be starting off the list with catchers, and you could easily swap this guy out with Kyle Teal, but I think Ben Rice, especially with the Babe Ruth boost, is really good. I kind of platoon him and Travis d'Arnaud, as well as I also have Samuel Basallo, but we'll get into that a little bit. At number 11, we have Johnny Bench. I think that card is okay. I mean, he doesn't really have the best swing for me personally. Pudge Rodriguez is pretty good if you want a little bit more speed. We have Craig Biggio. A lot of these hitters I've kind of ranked in terms of some contact guys, some power guys. I think Joe Mauer's still really good. I might use Dalton Rushing over Joe Mauer. It just depends on if you're looking for more contact versus righties. And then if you're platooning him with somebody else, then obviously you would probably rank these guys slightly different. But I have Cal Raleigh a little bit higher than maybe what you would expect, just because he does have really solid power but lower contact. If the user is really good at hitting, then that card will be really good. But then we got a couple switch hitters here at the top in Adley Rutschman and Ted Simmons, and in the middle there Samuel Basallo. I think that card's really solid. However, I'm batting like under 100 with him. But I think the best catcher is Mike Napoli. And then we're getting into some first basemen here. I know this guy's listed as a starting pitcher, but Cool Papa Bell and Buck Leonard I think are good, like kind of like honorable mentions for top cards. First baseman maybe a little bit more light than other positions, but if you wanted more speed, then you might want to get one of those outlier guys, maybe a switch hitter. Todd Helton's pretty good. We got Reese Hoskins is really solid. David Justice has a pretty good swing, but he doesn't really have the best defense. Frank Thomas, kind of the same thing, right? Really good hitter. Not the best swing for me personally, but also not a good defender. I like that Jack Caglione card. Max Muncy has a slightly different swing in MLB The Show 25, but still really good. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I would probably pick over the rest of these guys listed before him. Mark McGwire, I'm not sure if you want to use a guy with that low of vision, but still really solid, especially on the lower difficulties like Veteran and All-Star if you're starting out. We got Lance Berkman, and I think Babe Ruth is a card a lot of top players are using, even if they have all the collections done. Bryce Harper might be slightly better than Babe Ruth in some ways with inside edge, and especially if he's supercharged, right? That's the one thing that's not going to be on here, but will be soon in the game. Gil Hodges, best first baseman all around. Ian Kinsler, I think, is more of a DH, but I think with 125 clutch, he's really good. Hank Thompson's pretty solid. Alfonso Soriano's pretty solid. Lower contact types of players there, but I think they're all around pretty good. We got Hank Aaron on this list. I would really only use him at second base. Bryson Stott's pretty good, someone I played against had him. Christian Moore, I think, is a really good budget option. Might be better than Bryson Stott, even though he's a gold. J.J. Weatherholt at number 11. This card has some versatility. Travis Bazzana also has some versatility. Pretty similar cards. One guy has a little bit more speed and stealing. We got Bobby Grich. I think this card's pretty good. Does have a pretty nice swing. Paul Molitor, more of a contact guy, but also really solid swing too. Junior Caminero, I think, is really good at other positions, but I did put him on this list here. We got Carson Williams. Second baseman, there's not that many power hitters, so we got to have some guys that, in their secondary. If you don't want to put anybody in their secondary position, then you don't have to. You can pretty much field a team of these players in their primaries, but I do have a couple repeats on here. But at number 2, we got Whit Merrifield. I think he's a really solid second baseman, and then if you also get that card, then that means you have Bobby Witt, and you have a pretty solid middle infield. If you want to go with Ketel Marte, I think he is the best, and you could pair him with another switch hitter in the middle infield. But now we're moving into shortstops. That Namala is a good budget option. Caminero's not really a guy I would want to use at shortstop, but I still think he's a really good hitter. And personally, I value defense at shortstop a little bit more, or especially more than some other positions. So I will have some of these guys ranked slightly different than you may expect, just because, like, for example, this guy is a solid defender and does also have pretty good offense, just a little bit lower contact. But Christian Campbell's a guy I would pretty much use at all of his positions. I think he's a really solid hitter and overall, like, average defender. But we got Corey Seager up at the top as well. Ellie De La Cruz can't really hit lefties that well, but he's 99 speed, 99 steal with diamond defense, and he hits righties really solid. So I think he's got to be on here. Mookie Betts is a good shortstop and second baseman, but I'd probably put him at top 4 for both positions. Lindor, I might put at number 1 and flip him with Bobby Witt. This is the other switch-hitting middle infielder I'd kind of pair with Ketel Marte. But I don't think you can go wrong with Bobby Witt or Lindor. Bobby Witt maybe has more arm strength. Now we're getting into third baseman. I like that Hank Thompson card. I think he's pretty good. David Wright's a good option. George Brett has a really good swing, but low reaction. That's the one thing I don't like about that card. Third base, I think, is at least important for defense just because of the reaction. It's kind of a hot corner. You don't really want to let too many doubles get down the third base line. But we got Kobe Mayo. I think that card's a pretty good budget option for third base, especially with power. Third base is actually the one position I have the least amount of players at. I think I only had like 13 or 12 players. Only a couple positions I have that few amount. But really, I would be looking to use maybe these top 5 guys because they're fairly cheap, except for maybe Jose Ramirez and then this Chase Headley guy who I have at number 1. I think either one of those guys got to be like 1 and 2, just depending on what inside edge Jose Ramirez has and things like that. But now we're going to finish it off with outfielders. Didn't really know if I should rank them at their respective positions, but I wanted to kind of go with some really good defensive options like that Pete Crow guy I might bring in off the bench to replace one of these hitters that I have like late in the game or maybe like halfway through the game if I have a good lead. I really wouldn't want to use Anthony Santander out there in the outfield. Maybe I would prefer him at DH. That's the one position I did not include on this list, but I feel like we have so many players added on this list in a rapid fire pace that you could easily plug in one person at DH, maybe even like a Yordan Alvarez silver card or a Nick Castellanos gold card. There's a lot of different options, right? If you take that Travis d'Arnaud gold card and pair it with maybe somebody else who crushes righties, then there you go. You have almost a complete hitter. Or you have a guy like Gil Hodges. You just have to use 2 players to make that happen. But anyway, Ronald Acuna at number 14, kind of interesting. He's always been really high on my list of outfielders. Just doesn't really have the best reaction or speed in the game. I'd probably rather use like Sammy Sosa. This Dylan Cruz guy doesn't have the offense as much as some of these other guys, but he does have elite defense. I mean, 99 reaction is really, really good out there in the outfield. I do have Jarren Duran in the top 10 outfielders. He's not the best hitter, but that 97 speed, well, I do have him paralleled up a little bit, but if you don't have him paralleled, he's still really solid. I mean, Manny Ramirez is good. Ted Williams is good. A lot of Red Sox players. You could pretty much build a team of like, I guess, Babe Ruth captain, get some Royals guys out there in your middle infield, and then put a Red Sox outfield, and you're pretty stacked. You could also get some of these more expensive players, and some of those guys I mentioned are expensive, but you can really farm a team full of anybody and compete, especially if you are kind of strategizing how you're building your team with those boosts. But I think, of course, Beltran is number 1. That's going to do it for this video. I'm College Lefty, and let me know what you think about my top players at each position type of video. Until next time, peace out.